This is like an extension from earlier. Just got some new equipment I set up. That way I don't have any excuses. Over the last year, I've made a lot of excuses and a lot of things in my life, trying to find myself, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with a lot of aspects of my life. Trying to be a lot more transparent. I'm learning on to be more vocal and talk about things that I should be talking about. Over the last year, I've made a lot of mistakes, shortcuts. Even when I was down, out, feeling the worst I ever felt, I still made shortcuts because I just wanted to get to the finish line. And the biggest thing to remember is the finish line that you're looking for. Sometimes you can't even see it. You can't recognize it. You may not see it for a long time. We all rush to try to get to this finish line, and we all rush to do things that we're not always going to make it to, at least in the time that we think we will. I used to think that a portion of my life was meant to be a certain way. You know, if you work as hard as you can and you do the hardest things you can, and life may seem super hard, but in relativity to other people who may live in another country and have it so much worse, is life really that hard? And I think that that's where stuff really recently is, made me think, is being humble. And then I need to be better at being humble about things. And every day it's a struggle, and every day you have to work better at being humble. You think about it, every day you want to blame everything on somebody, somewhere. It doesn't matter what it is or when it is, you're going to blame. And that comes from the ego inside and not being humbleized, where you're just going to want to blame it. You can make the worst choices of your life, mess up 1,000 times, and you'll find one little inkling to blame on somebody else. And there are people and there are things in my life that I probably, miss probably more than anything. And when you learn about life the hard way, I think you learn that sometimes things get taken away on purpose for a while. Or is it always forever? I don't know. I've lost all the things I've had material numerous times. I've lost jobs, lost money, lost friends that you think are your friends. Some really are your friends, I guess. I don't know. Lost females. I've lost, honestly, myself as well. And I think the biggest issue with all of that is kind of just recognizing that instead of trying to find something to blame or blame somebody or blame whatever, you blame yourself, but you understand the idea that you can blame yourself and be hard on yourself, but don't let it stop you from being yourself. Don't let it stop you from working hard for yourself. Don't let it stop you from striving to be better. I think everybody's allowed to be upset. Everybody's allowed to have a time of feeling down. Everybody's allowed to have a time where they feel like maybe life just ain't worth it. I think that that's pretty regular across the board with a lot of people because your mind just can't comprehend things that it doesn't understand a lot of the time. And if you don't really have a good guiding light behind you, or mentally, you just can't really see a good result or a good end. It's huge. It really is huge when it comes to things because you think about it, being able to sometimes just be depressed or down, whatever you want to call it, I think sometimes can be a luxury. I think that's a luxury that a lot of people can't have. A lot of people may be feeling like they want to be depressed and they want to actually live it and feel those feelings all the way and just try to get it out and understand. But they got so many responsibilities, you just can't do it. You can't really get yourself to understand that or know about it or what have you. And I think when it comes down to the biggest issues are me, myself, I look at things, and this is an example. Is sometimes you do things and people don't want to stick around, or you don't feel like people are sticking around. And I think that that's important. It's important to understand. You in your life are never deserving, or there's no guarantee that you're going to ever have somebody 24/7 to have your back. It's a fallacy. You might think they do, and when you mess up, they peace out. Your best friends, they don't like a decision you made, and they don't like it anymore, so they leave. Best friends, man, that's not even your person. So it's very important to understand that at times you just have to be going through that struggle. But don't start blaming others during that struggle. Don't start blaming other things. Look into yourself and blame yourself. In my life, I've worked crazy hard at things in my career, you know. I've worked at different hospitals. I've took jobs, just the next step to the next one, always trying to hustle up and get experience. For me, the most experience I can gain is what gives me the win over the next person, which my win comes in that somebody's life is saved or doing better. That's important to me. That is important. When it comes to my career, being the best is so important to me that I'm willing to sacrifice sometimes short-term happiness for a long-term goal. But you also can't sacrifice your long-term happiness for a short-term goal masquerading as a long-term happiness or a long-term success. I mean, that's just not always what it is. It mimics it, and you may think it is, but it's not. When you make a bad decision, the biggest one that, I can tell y'all is, if you're going and you're cheating on your significant other, I think that's major when it comes to understanding what you shouldn't do, because in reality, you honestly are just cheating yourself. Every time you do something like that, you let your ego start to take over and make you think that you're not a humbled person, make you feel not as humbled as you should be. But remember, everything around here is going to smack you in the ass sometimes. It's going to smack you right in the face, man, let you know I'm here. It's going to bust your ass up. That's real life. That's real life. It's always going to happen. It doesn't matter if it's today, tomorrow, the next day, a month, years, on your deathbed. It doesn't matter. It could even be in the next life. If you believe in that, if you believe that if you leave this earth, you might be getting punished for the rest of eternity. You got to remember that. That's also another portion. Being happy is such a subjective thing because some people may look at things as happiness and having nothing. That's happiness. Some people look at things and think, well, they need a lot of things to make them happy. And then sometimes that's an empty happiness. But also at the same time, you got to recognize that it doesn't always come in those forms. And sometimes it's just people who are in your life, people who you're dogging out, not treating right, not even recognizing, not understanding. Maybe it's your best friend. Sometimes you mess around with your best friend's people. Sometimes you don't tell your best friend all the truth about yourself. You don't tell them when you're feeling down. You don't tell them when you lost a job, whatever. You're holding information or you're treating them badly. That's an issue. Having a support system during your time of need is super important. I feel so bad for people who don't have a support system, but I can also, relate with regard to sometimes losing a good support because you're messing around and bad habits or bad ideas or bad behaviors cause things to leave in your life. And I don't mean just a significant other. And I think that you guys got to understand that the way the world works is not always just one thing. Yeah, all right, your person might leave you. You might have a problem now, but also your job is deteriorating. Well, now what are you going to do? Because you got to find a job somewhere else. Hopefully it makes the same amount of money and you ain't maxed out and have a problem. That's a big issue. So there's just so much to it, and there's so many different factors and examples I can give you, I always say that if you can't reflect back on what you did, then you probably didn't learn your lesson. And that's major, because a lot of the time you'll get drugged through the dirt, and I mean through the dirt, drugged through it. And then when you look back on yourself a month later, you don't even really recognize that's what happened, because now a month later you're doing the same stuff that you were doing before. You're causing the same problems over and over and over again. So you have to just understand that sometimes you got to step back, take a second, and understand what you're really fighting for and what you're doing. I think it's so important to understand that you're not always going to deserve things in your life. Sometimes you will mess up and you will lose things in your life that you don't deserve. If some things sometimes come back in your life, it's not more or less are you deserving, it's if that's what you should be having. Because a lot of the time it is somebody that you should have. It should be a thing, a job, whatever, a connection. That's what you should have. You may not be deserving of it, but it's what you should have and you were given it as a gift. Don't squander the gift. I think the biggest thing that we do is we squander gifts because we're shooting for the next thing, but don't get it twisted by knowing that sometimes the next thing is where your destiny is. You have to break that wall to get to that destiny. You can't just pity patter around and think that you're going to break that wall to get that, because that's going to be hard. That's going to be difficult. That's going to take so much from you that you're going to feel like you've lost everything, you know? You may have to move away for a little bit of time. You may have to get a job somewhere else. You might have to leave somebody that you love for a little bit of time because maybe they mess up. Maybe they got to learn. Maybe you got to learn yourself. Once you learn and they learn, hopefully at the same time, you come back together. People look at things so finite and look at it as a one and done, when sometimes some things in life just need a little bit of fight. You might get told no plenty of times at those jobs. I've been interviewed before and somebody was like, you seem a little bit too independent. You seem a little bit too like you don't really need us. And we're a little bit bigger of a micromanager and it's just not going to work. All right, I respect it 100%. Is there anything I can do better? No, it just is what it is. For me, that's what it is. That's nothing I can do about it. But I know that I could try to help. Better myself, better my opportunities, better myself in the future in regard to my career or what have you. So just think the biggest thing you got to realize is it's all about how much work you're willing to put in, what you're willing to do to be the best. What are you willing to overcome? What are you willing to take on? I mean, you got to withstand some of the most crazy fights in the world, some of the biggest wars up here you might have to understand and deal with and get over. That's all right. Just want to see that, people keep pushing no matter what, no matter how hard it seems, no matter what's going on, no matter what gets taken away. A guy upstairs has a plan, and it ain't always right the way we see it. It's right in their eyes, it's right for that. But for us, sometimes we just have a tough time, and we'll get there. You'll get there. Just try to keep at it. So I appreciate y'all as always.